So if you'll turn over to the mindset section, we're going to take a look at page 7 and start talking about the mindsets of highly effective sales professionals. And so as we think about this concept on page 7, you've heard probably a lot about the concept of cold calling and warm calling, and some people talk about social calling. There's so many different names in the industry today. We're going to focus on and spend our time today on something that we refer to as value calling. Can I have someone read the definition of value calling in the middle of page 7? Would you please do that?
Value calling, communicating with a targeted prospect with the intent to explore whether or not mutual value can be created.
Thanks for doing that, Rick. And so if you think about that, there's a lot involved in that definition. And this is really what we're going to spend the rest of our day on. And so what I'm going to welcome you to do is actually as a table, just have a very quick dialogue as a table as to what do you find interesting or different about that definition versus what you've heard of in terms of cold calling or warm calling or social calling and some of the things that you've heard. So just at your table, have a very brief discussion about things that you see inside of that value calling that strike you as interesting. All right, so let's talk about this a little bit. Today we're going to spend virtually the entire day on this concept of value calling, the mindset, skill sets, and tool sets of value calling. And it's very different in kind than the concept of traditional cold calling, or as we've said, warm calling, social calling, a lot of different things that are out there. So as a table, you had a brief exercise. What did you see inside of this definition that's different, of interest to you in terms of what is value calling versus everything else? Who would share with me something that you came up with in terms of your table discussions? Yes, please.
We like the or not.
Okay, talk to me a little bit more about that. What about the or not?
It doesn't have to be every person that you call is a prospect. You can make a decision whether they are a good fit for you.
Okay. And so one of our key ideas or mindsets is that if you're looking for a yes, enable the no. Make no an option, and it allows people to say yes a lot easier. And so one of the things we'll focus on throughout the day is that or not piece is really a key aspect of value calling, that it's a choice, and it's a choice for actually both of us as we go into the prospecting. Absolutely, great point. What else? What else should you pick up inside of that definition?
A couple things jumped out at this table. One was communicating with versus talking at or talking to. So it kind of lays the foundation of let's have a conversation, which is a bit disarming, which a word that was shared here. Intention. I mean, let's have an intention and a path and make no or yes, okay, and then mutual value, the whole term and thinking around mutual, there's got to be a win-win, as you've been saying so far this morning, Sean. So those are a few of the things that we caught.
Yeah, I like the focus on the dialogue, right? It's a dialogue, not a monologue. So it's not me calling you and giving you my pitch and just seeing if there's interest. Let's actually have a business dialogue. Let's see if we can create that mutual value. If so, let's do great business together. If not, we're okay with that. That's what we're looking for. All right, well, let's take a look, if you will, at the mindsets that we're going to focus on in this section. So if you look at the top of page 7, we're going to focus on this concept of the way highly effective prospectors think. And we're going to refer to those as mindsets. And we're going to focus in on 2 of them. So as you heard Craig say in that earlier video, Franklin Covey has worked with literally thousands of sales professionals around the world and learned what the best of the best do. When it comes to effectively filling your pipeline, these are the 2 most important mindsets that we have found. The very first is this aspect that we call rethinking the funnel. There's a lot of heritage or a lot of background involved in what we call the funnel and how you think about filling your pipeline. One of the things we're going to challenge you with today is to rethink that. Can we actually think about filling our pipeline in a different way? What we have found is the best of the best. Definitely think about it in a different way. The second mindset we're going to focus on is a key that we call intent counts more than technique. Dan mentioned it when he said the intention. Why are you reaching out to this person? Are you reaching out with them to create a sale, to make money, or are you reaching out to create mutual value? And there's actually a difference between those 2 things. And so what we're going to do is focus in depth on these 2 mindsets. To jump into this, we're going to watch a video. And in this video, you're going to meet someone interesting. You're going to meet a lady. You see her right here on page 7 in that lower right-hand corner, and her name is Maria. Maria is from Italy, and she is a highly effective salesperson. But as you see in this video, that wasn't always the case. And so let's watch this video as Craig and Maria introduce the concepts of the mindsets of value calling.
As I mentioned before, we've studied the mindsets, skill sets, and tool sets of the world's top performers. Let's introduce you to Maria. Maria is one of those top sales performers who has learned over time the principles and practices that are required to perform at a high level. But she hasn't always been that way. Maria had to break away from the traditional thinking and bad habits that wore her down and threatened to keep her from discovering the things we're sharing with you today. Thomas Kuhn said, "Every major breakthrough is usually a break with traditional ways of thinking." Stephen Covey made a similar observation, that if you want small changes, work on your behavior. If you want quantum leap changes, work on your paradigms. As we've observed top performers like Maria, we've discovered they have some different mindsets. The first mindset is that top performers see a different sales funnel. The second mindset is that top performers understand that intent counts more than technique. 3 years ago, Maria was far from a top performer. She missed quota, saw her earnings shrink, and even got fatigued by banging her head against the cold calling wall. She was ready to quit. She saw sales as just a numbers game. She had the 100, 10, 3 sales funnel written on her wall for inspiration. She would have to connect with 100 prospects to get 10 appointments to make 3 sales. Now, she was committed to smiling and dialing to hit those numbers, even if it killed her, and it almost did. But looking at sales as only a numbers game misses out on the true power of helping our clients succeed. As Maria learned to see the funnel differently, she began to invest her time differently, and by being more focused on putting better qualified prospects into her funnel rather than putting anyone and everyone, she began to see amazing results. She discovered that she had more time to focus better on each prospective client and become proficient at understanding what they would truly need in order to bring value to those prospects. Her intent changed from making the sale to helping each prospective client find a solution to what they were looking for and what they were dealing with. As a result, she became a trusted advisor and well respected by her clients. And a much higher percentage of prospects became clients. And those clients brought referrals and also became returning customers. When her perspective, preparation, and intent changed, her prospects were able to see her incredible value, and she became a relevant top sales performer. The great thing for you is that you can get to where Maria is much quicker than she did.
All right, so if you take a look over on page 8, let's think about this first mindset. So we've met Maria, as we said, and as you saw in that video, Maria wasn't always as successful as she is. My favorite line is, it almost killed her. How many of you have ever felt that way? Literally, you look just like she looked in that video, just literally banging your head against the wall, just trying to hit those numbers. And so if you think of the traditional view of the sales funnel, you take a look up on the screen or again on page 8 in your book. This is what the traditional view of the sales funnel looks like. A lot of opportunities going in the top, some opportunities coming out the bottom. Maria has learned to look at it a different way, to rethink the funnel. And the way she sees the funnel now is the funnel that is on the right-hand side. A very different funnel indeed, but for very specific reasons. If you take a look at those two funnels and you think about that video, who would share some insights about this mindset of rethinking the funnel? What do you see in those images? What did you hear that Maria had learned inside of that video? Go ahead.
I think those, once you start thinking mutually, or at least the interest of it, you're going selectively for where there is a mutual interest where you can help. And as a result, not only those, but you also get like additional accounts, maybe through referral or through other regions.
Okay, so if you take a look at how that's represented graphically, where do you see that?
At the bottom, like you can see, there are 3 which you selected, You got those, but at the same time, because of the referral, you were able to convert other ones.
Yeah, so it's the concept of really establishing that mutual value, really focusing on helping a client be successful, and then learning over time that in focusing on their success, I actually enjoy success as well. And so you see the multiplication effect, if you will, through the funnel. Now again, a lot of people look at that and just don't see it. That can't be. There's no way that I can do that and have more come out the bottom of the funnel, when indeed, you can, as you just exemplified, focusing on that mutual value. What else do you see in the image, or did you pick up in the video about this mindset of rethinking the funnel? Go ahead.
Quality of the conversations yield better results.
Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Well, specifically, instead of focusing on making sales as a number, making relationships and developing the outcome, mutual benefit.
Yeah, if you think about the video, what was she focused on? She was sitting at her desk, and what was she looking at all the time? She's looking at a picture on the wall of those numbers, and it's just haunting her. And so at one point in time, you literally saw her rip that down and be like, you know what, I don't need to focus on the numbers. I need to focus on the relationships and creating that value. I like that. What else do you see in the image or on the video? Some other key points there.
So I think the image just really goes to qualifying people in and qualifying them out, right? If you're qualifying them in, then you're getting less coming in, but you're going to get more coming out at the end.
Yes, if you look at the traditional funnel on the left-hand side, all those opportunities are going in, and I'm going to invest all of my time on that. And so one of the things we find is that people that don't adapt to this mindset, one of the reasons they say they don't research and prepare and do all the things we're going to talk about is because they don't have time. Well, they have time, they're just spending it on all of those ineffective opportunities. And so in rethinking the funnel, you become more selective, more focused, if you will, in who I'm going to spend my time with. Because I'm spending it with less people, I have a lot more time to invest in them. Absolutely. What else? Anything else if you think about the pictures there on page 8? Right, so here's the question for you. If you take a look at the bottom of page 8, you think about the graphic representation here. You think about what Maria has learned throughout the video. The key question for you becomes, at the bottom of page 8, how could adopting this mindset change the way that you look at filling your pipeline? So think about you as an individual and think about adopting this different mindset. So again, bottom of page 8, just write down some thoughts. How could adopting this mindset change the way you look at filling your pipeline? Spend a couple minutes jotting down some thoughts for yourself. All right, who would share something? What'd you write down? If I adopt this mindset, what will it do for me? How will it change the way I think about and behave in terms of filling my pipeline? What'd you come up with?
Seems like you'd enjoy the process a lot more.
Yes. Yeah, so if you think about Maria, she didn't look really happy there in her early days. A little bit disheveled in her appearance, a little bit stressed out. And so one thing is just be able to enjoy my job. So that would be one key takeaway. I like it. What else? How would this affect you personally if you were to adapt this behavior? Yes?
It would enable me to throw away my call sheet and actually develop relationships.
Throw away your call sheet. Talk to me. What do you mean by that?
So I have a call sheet that has hundreds and hundreds of names on it. And each week I'll go through and I'll look at, have I pinged them this week? When's the last time that I've tried to reach out to them? So it's a lot more random. And then instead of being strategic and going, okay, this is who I want to focus on, this is where I want to develop that relationship.
Yeah, and so it's that investment of time in the person, right? And so it's one of the things we sometimes forget. If we look at it from the standpoint of numbers, you just represent a number to me, and that's the way I think about you. And so you're going to kind of get rid of that mindset and really think about really developing relationships and investing the time. And with that investment, you get the return from it. Absolutely. Who else? What else will this adoption do?
It would help you to focus on quality over quantity.
Say it again, quality versus quantity?
Yeah, quality over quantity.
Yeah, so if you think about the difference in the representation, on the left-hand side, it's just pure quantity, right? It's a numbers game. And so I just put everything in there hoping and praying that something comes out and I meet my objectives, where on the right-hand side, it's more about the quality. I can invest on figuring out who is a good prospect of mine, doing some research and developing that relationship and really developing a quality relationship. So we can say quality versus quantity. One more. What else? What else do you think of? If I am able to adopt this mindset, how will this change me and my behaviors going forward? What'd you come up with?
I might spend more time actually considering the different ways to approach my clients and practicing and rehearsing different ways that it could go down.
Yeah, so one of the things we find very commonly in sales, it goes back to this concept of practice you mentioned earlier, is that we don't like to practice a lot. And if and when we do practice, where do we sometimes practice? In the parking lot right before going in, right? Or sometimes even in front of the client. Let me try something new here. And so if I refocus on this and I focus more on quality and relationships, maybe I can invest some more time in my approach and really refine it and figure out what works and what doesn't. And so be able to really refine my approach. And so as Maria had learned, again, as you saw in the beginning of that video, it wasn't always this way. And so when we think about these mindsets, over time, it begins to help you understand the way that successful people think about approaching the world of sales. And so as we leave this first mindset, rethinking the funnel, any final questions, thoughts, or comments about this first mindset? Makes good sense. Yeah, you'll find a lot of what we do makes good sense. And so it's that, common sense is not common practice concept. And so it makes good sense. Do I take the time? Do I invest the time to actually make it become part of what I do from that standpoint? So as we move past that one, we're going to move into the second mindset, which you'll see over on page 9. And as we get into this, let me ask you a couple questions. Just think about these before you answer. And they're almost rhetoric in nature, but just think about the question. And so the first question is, true or false? People will assign an intent to you whether you want them to or not. True? People will assign an intent to you whether you want them to or not. We believe that that is true as well. Second true or false question, the intent they assign to you will have a significant impact on the quality of the information that they're willing to share with you. Right? And so you think about it, people assign an intent to you right away. And the intent that they ascribe to you, that they assign to you, determines how much information that they're willing to share. So when you walk up to someone, say, "Hi, Brian, my name's Sean. I'm from Franklin Covey. I'm in sales." Ew, you're in sales? As soon as I introduce myself and say I'm in sales, is he going to assign an intent to me? And what is that intent usually assigned to us as sales professionals? What does he assign to me? He doesn't even know me yet, but what does he think about me? I want to sell you something, right? I make money by what? Selling you something, whether you need it or not. What else? What else will he assign to me in terms of my intent? Why am I even interested in talking to him? What is my approach to him? And so if you think about it, as soon as we introduce ourselves, people assign an intent to us. In the world of professional selling, that isn't usually a good intent. And so we've got this battle to overcome. And so the second mindset we're going to focus on is referred to as intent counts more than technique. We're going to revisit Craig and Maria to better understand what this concept is all about. If you take a look over on, I think it's page 12, you'll see a blank notes page. You can take some notes there or just at the bottom of page 9. Either place there's some space, and I highly encourage you to take some notes as you watch this one. And again, when the video is over, we'll do a table debrief to kind of think about our takeaways from this video. So let's check back in with Craig and Maria on this second mindset. Intent counts more than technique.
People are unlikely to share their beliefs or trust your advice unless they trust your intent. Is the intent of your questions and recommendations to help them get what they want in a way they feel good about? Or is your intent to help you get what you want in a way you feel good about? People can sense this. When it comes to intent, most salespeople, rightly or wrongly, are judged guilty until proven innocent. And this couldn't be more true than at the beginning of the sales cycle, when you're calling on someone who doesn't even know you. If your intent serves the interests of your prospective client, as well as your own, you can act congruently with that intent. Trust will increase, mutual understanding will increase, and you will more often arrive at solutions that truly meet your prospective client's needs. Trust comes from confidence in and respect for the other person in the relationship. To create confidence and respect, you must see prospecting as developing meaningful relationships with people. Trust will follow. You can research and prepare so that your intent is in the best interest of both the prospective client and yourself. When you act congruently with sincere intent, it can set you free. Free to ask tough questions and speak truth to those in power. Free to remain authentic and loyal to what you value. Free to stay open to different opinions and beliefs. Free to not take yourself so seriously, to relax and have a ready sense of humor. But remember, if your intent is not crystal clear to you, it's likely not clear to your prospective client. There is a level at which we and our prospective clients share mutual interests. It's up to us to find and communicate it. If our prospective clients do not perceive they're getting a solution that meets their needs, our sincere intent allows them to choose to do nothing or go somewhere else to meet those needs. A no in this kind of environment is not necessarily rejection, and often leaves the door open to future positive interactions with prospective clients. As Jack Welch, former chairman and CEO of GE, has said, one thing we've discovered with certainty is that anything we do that makes the customer more successful inevitably results in a financial return for us.
All right, there's a lot of things to think about and talk about in that video. So if I could just invite you as a table again to just have a brief conversation about what did you think about and take away from that video on this second mindset, intent counts more than technique. Someone would start a conversation at each table and then we'll get back together as a large group. All right, let's pull you back in. And just based on the amount of conversations that are happening, you can tell that this is a very rich dialogue, a very rich mindset to think about. So we talk about this concept of intent counts more than technique. What did you come up with in terms of your discussions with your table about the video and the concept of intent counts more than technique? Who would be willing to share a thought? Go ahead.
Well, I find that, it mentioned the video about the freedom, and I think that is really important because when you go in front of a client and they do assume what your intent is, when you change that game, they may have a wall put up at first, and when you change the game and take down that wall, now you really have a real conversation about value and why you're there instead of, them either side being on the defensive, trying to in an awkward situation. You can break down that wall and have a good conversation.
Yeah. That is such a great point that Clayton brings up. I'd like you to actually write that phrase down in your book. If you did not write that down, somewhere on that page, just write down, intent sets you free. And as he just exemplified in his discussion there, if you think about it, we're going to talk about yellow lights later. When a client offers a stall, a doubt, or an objection, so often we become defensive because our goal is to make a sale. But if we think about intent and be able to try to create value, if I focus on that intent and not the techniques that I'm trying to apply, and I'm just there to create that mutual value, it sets me free to not get defensive, to just answer that question from a standpoint of mutual value. If we can figure it out, let's keep going forward. If we can't, probably makes sense we don't do business together, and I'm okay with that. And so it's really a key point of intent, absolutely. What else did you come up with? Yes, Liz.
Even if you don't do business today, the opportunity for down the road, you're leaving that door open by giving them the opportunity to say no today.
Absolutely. As mentioned earlier, we got to see a quote from Stephen Covey, obviously the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. We talk a lot about the concept of win-win, and what you just mentioned was actually called win-win or no deal, which is that I actually focus on value, not only for today, but for the long point of this relationship, that if we can't find mutual value in this deal, I'm okay with that. Let's stay partners, let's stay friends, let's look for value on the next opportunity that comes up. And so we don't do damage to the relationship, we don't walk away mad or resentful, we don't become defensive, we just say, well, we can't do something here, let's do business next time around. Absolutely, a different way to think about it. One more, what else should you think about when it comes to intent counts more than technique? Yes.
We talk about intent in different cultures. Like I deal with Latin America, and so intent, that relationship between us and the client is extremely important. Negotiations are done over relationships, that trust, that you can be the most expensive product on the market, but if they don't have that trust and that loyalty with you, you won't make the sale. And it's kind of like, to her point, even if it's not a solution, it never closes the door. They've always got that relationship that maybe further down the road, you can gain their business.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting when you think about the international concept. It's very different. And so if you think about intent, intent is expressed through the words that we use. And so I've got an intent inside, but the words I use to communicate that to you expresses that intent to you. And if you think about internationally, that's expressed very different ways. Some cultures are very, very direct. Some you would never, ever, ever say something like that to a client. And so when you think about intent, it's expression of you and how you communicate with and dialogue with your customers from that standpoint. As we dive into this, let's take a look at how this actually works, because there's some interesting things happening in the brain. So if you take a look over on page 9, as we think about interacting with our customers, when we reach out to a customer and we say something, we begin that dialogue, an interesting thing happens inside the human brain as to how that expression of our words is actually rooted through the human brain. And so when we first interact with a client, our belief is that you can't get access to here. And that's actually, if you want to write down in your book, that's actually pointing to what we call the cortical layer. It's where all logic and reasoning and thinking occurs. If you think about it, we need to get access to that part of the brain with our clients. We need to get them to think about the logical reasons why it makes sense and those kind of things. So we have to have access there. But what's interesting is the way the brain works, you don't get immediate access to that area. You can't get access here without first passing the test here. And you see that little orange dot in your book. I'd like you to actually label that dot. It's called the amygdala. Do not ask me to spell it because I'll make a mistake. Just phonetically put it out there. It's called the amygdala. Does anybody remember, we're going to take you way back to science class here. Does anybody remember what the amygdala does? What's its responsibility? Filter. Talk to me more. Filter of what?
Well, it filters information going in to decide if you want to move forward.
Yeah, so when I say something to you, when I approach you and I say something, it gets routing through the amygdala first. The amygdala is responsible for fight, flight, or freeze. So if you think about the amygdala, it serves a very important purpose in human behavior and human survivalship. And so it's a filter of, is this safe or not? And so as you express your intent to me, as you say those words, think about your best shot. You express some intent there. You expressed why you want to talk to me. And in that, it first gets filtered through the amygdala. And the amygdala very quickly says, is this person safe or not? If they deem you safe, then that question gets routed up to the cortex, and we can have a very open business dialogue about how we can create value. If you're judged unsafe, what does the amygdala do? It says, run! It says, run, run, run. So if you think about it, the amygdala is nothing more than a big old salesperson sniffer. If you look like, act like, sound like a salesperson to the amygdala, guess what you are? You're a salesperson. And the amygdala quickly says, this person is not safe. Do not open up to this person. And all communication is stopped at that point in time. So if you think about it, when we think about our intent, we think about it from the standpoint that this isn't something that you can fake. You can't just fake good intent. You can't walk up to someone and say, hi, Brian, my name's Sean. I'm a trusted business advisor. It's actually on my card if you want to see it. Right? You can't just say, oh, actually, if you actually say the words, no, trust me, how does the amygdala respond to that? Whoa, why is this person saying that, right? And so if you think about it, you can't fake it. It's something that has to come from inside of you. It has to come from your being as to why are you reaching out to this person? Are you truly trying to create mutual value with this person? And if you're not, the person's amygdala is probably going to pick it up very, very, very quickly. So let's think about this in practical application. How does this apply in real world? And so here's what I want you to do. Just think about how this has affected us as an individual. Over on page 10, I want you to think about yourself personally for a minute. Not even as a business person, just as a man or a woman, a husband, a wife, a father, a mother, just someone that was out there in the world doing some business. It says, describe a business situation. Now, don't write it out. Just write down some bullet points, some quick thinking for yourself. Describe a business situation where you have experienced someone else having your best interest in mind. When you actually felt that person's intent, and their intent was to help you be successful. Think about that type of a business situation, and I want you to write down some very specific things. First, you see the first question is, how did that make you feel? As a person, when you actually felt that that person had my best interest in mind, what type of feelings did that embrace inside of you? And then secondly, how did you respond to that feeling that this person had your best interest in mind? Let me give you 3 or 4 minutes to think about this. Again, don't write it out specifically, but just put down some bullet points. When have you experienced this yourself? How did it make you feel? How did you respond to it? All right, let's talk about this. By show of hands, how many of you just now experienced a little bit of a struggle actually even thinking about when that has occurred for you? Does anybody have that? Look around the rooms. There's about 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 hands. You've had a long time in your life to experience this, right? It's not like I said yesterday, where did you feel this? I was talking about ever. And some of us struggle to even think of a single situation. What does that tell you about this mindset? It's rare. It's rare. And if you think about it, just this mindset itself can differentiate you from the competition. That we as human beings can sit in this room and struggle to think of a single time that I have felt someone else have my best interest in mind. Others of you, instantaneously you thought of something. Who would be willing to share? You don't have to get into specifics if you don't want, but who would be willing to share something they wrote down where you truly felt this as an individual? You felt someone else had your best interest in mind. Yes, please, Jared.
Yeah, sure. So I think part of the reason this came to mind is it seems to be uncommon in the industry, but I had a flight get canceled due to weather, and generally the ladies working the desk have a reputation for not really caring about where you're going, when you're going, things like that. And it was for a 5-week trip, and so she rerouted me for the same day, so I actually didn't miss any time when everybody else did, which again, airline industry is not famous for that, so it was kind of nice to be able to make that happen.
Yeah, so if you think about it, as soon as it was canceled, you had prepared yourself for a bad experience, right? We've all been in those lines where it's just, 3 days from now we'll get you out, and they really don't care. But you experienced someone who actually did care from that standpoint. And so if you think about how it made you feel, how did it make you feel when you felt that, which was different than what you were expecting?
Yeah, first was surprise, because again, you put up the wall ready to argue with them. But 2 was I felt safe. I felt the fact that I could have an honest conversation. I didn't have to prove my point. I could be honest with what I was doing, where I was going, and she was going to take care of me.
Yeah, and it's that honesty. Again, you experienced honesty from them, and you gave honesty back. And so if you think about it, you expected a fight. And so your amygdala works on patterns. And so you hear flight canceled, your amygdala immediately says, all right, it's fight or flight. I can't fly because it was just canceled. It's up for a fight. We're going to fight at this point in time. So you go in ready for a fight, and she immediately brings you down and expresses trust you. And so you react and get a good outcome from that. Who else can think of an example where that's happened for them?
Happened this morning coming into the Marriott. When I approached the desk and said I needed verification on my parking permit, she said, well, we don't have anything that authorizes verification for Franklin County. We don't have any of that on the record. So I pulled out the little receipt. She looked at it. She walked from behind the desk, came right up to me and said, I understand. I apologize. I didn't have that information. We get so many business meetings held here. Sometimes we don't meet that expectation because we're not aware of it. And then she literally walked me to the point where I had to come down the aisleway and said, your meeting is just right down that hallway. Very accommodating, but immediately my point was there's going to be a confrontation here right up front. She did a very good job.
Absolutely. So a couple things. She came out from behind the counter to meet you in your space, and she offered you a what? An apology. Yep. I'm sorry. And so if you think about it, very often we just become defensive and we get in for the fight, but she said, I'm sorry. We have so many things going on. And then she took the time to literally walk you to where you're going. And so another great example. One more. Who can think of a time where someone actually had your best interest?
I think, Miss, this happened with me. Like I was trying to do something for myself, starting something, and then working with some business partner. I know that it could actually eventually be helpful to him as well. I started talking. It's a remote possibility that it can help him, but rather than asking about anything about his part, in fact, he came up with a lot of help suggestions, and without me even asking, I know he connected me to several different people to go and talk. So I wasn't sure, but like it shows very clearly his intent was just to help me. And I would say till this date, anything I try to do, like I go and take his advice. That thing didn't work, but I still go and try to take his advice. So he's kind of my trusted advisor now.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you think about that, think about in sales, what does it take to get to a trusted advisor level? And that's reserved for very few people that you would actually give that, and you give it to that person. So when you think about how did it make me feel, I have attributed to that person so much respect that I actually go to them to seek advice, to seek information from that. And so that's obviously what we're all striving for, and this is one of the keys to it. So if you think about it, the real question becomes not when have I experienced this, but actually do my clients experience this? And so the question I would like you to think about last as we finish up this exercise is how not even how, but do your clients experience that from you? Do they get the experience where you offer apologies when there's a mistake, where you get to that trusted advisor? Is that something they experience from you? And here's the meat of the exercise. If yes, what has allowed you to earn that freedom to be able to have your clients feel it that way? And if they don't, what's impeding them from feeling that? What are the pressures that you're facing that you can't have your clients feel that from you? And so the question is, do your clients currently feel that you always have their best interests in mind? If yes, what's working into your advantage that's allowing that to occur? And if no, why not? What's blocking that from happening? So just jot some thoughts down for yourself. Do your clients feel that from you? Now, I definitely don't want to put anybody on the spot here, so feel free to respond or not, but let's just see if we can have a discussion about this. Anybody willing to volunteer that they were able to actually answer that question yes and explain why so? Clayton, what'd you come up with?
I said yes because we have a genuine relationship. A lot of my clients, we've spent a lot of time together. They know that sometimes if there's an opportunity, it doesn't work that they do business with me on that opportunity. It may go to a competitor. They know they can come back to me. The door's always open. We don't. They can call me anytime, and I'll take their call, and we can have a discussion about their needs. And I'm not just trying to throw something at them to fix it. That they know I'm trying to understand what their problem is and what challenges they're facing, so we can work on something together. So I think that's really one of the key successes is not always just trying to fix whatever when they call, but just try to work through that solution together. And sometimes it doesn't work out, but they do call me back, and we still visit even if there's not something going on.
Yeah, if you really think about intent, if I really have intent for you to be successful, that's what I want for you. I want you to be successful. If I can create that for you, then let's do great business together. If someone can do it better than I can, if I really want you to be successful, what do I want for you? I want you to actually do the business with them, but keep me in mind. Let's keep the relationship open. So it really is embracing that win-win or no deal from that standpoint. And so congratulations on being there. A little bit more difficult. Anybody willing to say that they actually answered that question no? And it's not always a definitive no, never, but maybe I have some challenges with that my clients don't always feel that from me. Do you mind sharing?
So I wanted to answer both actually, yes and no, both. Yeah, so I said first part I was saying probably no. Means most of my clients I would say probably no. And I'm not too sure what's the reason, but at least, and I think I need to hear your perspective, it's probably because of most of these accounts, it's a job to job. It's like a short-term interest, actually it wins over all the things that we're talking about. So that's, I think, probably one of the reasons my feeling is it's not that kind of relationship. And if I would have answered yes, similar to Clayton, I felt it's not because of the trusted relation, it may be because we were the best in the lot. So the client has probably burned with the others, and this is what the best I can think of. I need something, and I think these guys can do it. It's more from, so again, a short-term thing. That's how I have seen both.
Absolutely, thanks for sharing. Let's create some safety. So let's say that none of us in this room would ever experience this, but there are some salespeople who do, who don't always have an opportunity for their customer to feel. And so let's think about the pressures that push back on having a good intent. So if we just talk about other people, a lot of times it's safer to talk about other people. So if we talk about those people who have not made it yet there, what do you think are some of those natural pressures in the world of sales that don't always allow me to express my intent to my customers? What can you think of that you just think of as natural occurring pressures that push back?
Meeting quota.
Yeah, quota. Right? As soon as if you have a quota, welcome to a pushback with intent, because I really, really do want to help you succeed, but I haven't made my quarter yet, and I really just got out of a really bad call with my boss, and all that pressure is real pressure pushing on you, saying, get the sale, get the sale, get the sale, get the sale, and you've got to try and balance that inside. and say, I need the sale. I'm in sales. I got to meet my quota, but I really want to do it by helping you be successful. And so quota is one of those pressures. What are others?
For policies.
Talk to me a little bit more about that. What do you mean?
Sometimes you have a limit. Sometimes there's policies within a corporation that won't allow you to go outside of it, you know.
So just really policies and procedures that are in place. Sometimes the internal bureaucracies are harder to fight than it is to get a good client. And so I've got things I want to do, but the normal way of doing business is pushing back against that. It's actually harder to do the business inside. I want to fight for them, but I can't. And so that's pressuring against us. What else?
Sometimes the intent is there, but the client you're trying to work with, or the prospect, has had a bad experience with your organization or another representative. And so that barrier is hard to get around.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great point to think about, that intent is not I think about it once a month, or I think about it Monday mornings for the week. It's really, you think about it on every situation. So if I know that I'm walking in to meet a client for the first time, and my past salesperson that had that account or account manager or anybody failed, I really have to think about my intent. I really have to ground myself before I walk in there and really prepare myself to think about what's going to be coming at me, because all that badness is attributed to you. You represent all of that. And so not only am I in sales now, but now my company's actually performed poorly in the past, and I have all of that to overcome. And so when you think about it, intent is something we have to think about constantly as we introduce ourselves to our customers. So let's take a look at some startling statistics. These are actually scary to look at. Take a look at the bottom of page 10, and just want you to hypothetically take a guess and put some numbers in here. And so down at the bottom of page 10, it says blank percent. So what percent? You're going to fill in a number between 0 and 100. What percent of salespeople believe that their customers and prospects would rate their trustworthiness on a scale of 1 to 10 as a 9 or a 10? So you're going to put a percentage in there. What percentages of salespeople believe that their customers would rate them a 9 or a 10? Put a number in there. And then the second question is, what percent of buyers say that they trust salespeople? Who would throw out a number for the first one? What'd you say? What percentage of salespeople would say that they're a 9 or a 10 on the trustworthiness scale? 100%? 85, so it's pretty high. 74, 85, 50, 90. Yes, we're probably averaging about 80 in there, somewhere around there. How about professionals that say that they trust salespeople? What number did you put there? 10, 15, 25. Pure optimist at heart. 5%. 50. So probably averages again about 20. So we say about 80-20, right? About 80% of people say that they are trustworthy, and only about 20% of people say that they trust. Numbers are pretty darn close. So 82%, feel free to write these numbers in. 82% of salespeople feel that their customers would rate them as a 9 or a 10 on a trustworthiness scale, but only 16% of people say that they trust salespeople. Think of that gap in perception. They think about us very differently than we think about ourselves. The last exercise we want to go through here on the concept of intent, and this is going to take us into our break, if you're wondering, is over on page 11. If you think about approaching a prospect, think about, again, as we said, writing that in-mail, writing an email to them, picking up the phone and calling them. When you pick up the phone to reach out to that prospect, you have some very specific things in mind. You have a lot of things in mind. When the client is on their end receiving those calls from sales professionals like yourself, they have some things in mind on their end. And in the middle of those two, where those two things come together, you actually saw an example of this in Craig's video, that mutual benefit is a very small slice of those two worlds. And so here's what I would like you to do. Just think about it for a second in terms of, as you approach your customer on page 11, you see some lines in the orange bubble. In here, I would just like you to jot down some bullets of what is it, as you approach your customers, what is it that you have in mind for yourself? This may or may not have anything to do with the customer. It's just what is in your mind as you reach out to your customers. Then spend some time on the blue side, thinking about it from the customer's perspective. What's in mind for them? What are they looking for? How do they define success? What are they looking for as a business partner? Once you get some healthy input in both of those, think about that mutual benefit, that mutual value, and where do those things come together? What can you actually put in that white space that I'm looking for and they're looking for? This is an important exercise. I'll give you 4 or 5 minutes to write some things down. Really press yourself to think, what am I thinking about? What are they thinking about? What are we thinking about? One of the things we find helpful with this exercise is to create some synergy. And so what I'd like you to do is you've either got 4 or 5 of you at a table. Some of you have 6. Pair up, and for some of you may become a threesome. And so just get with a person. So like Andrew and Steve will be together, and then the 3 ladies will be here. So if you've got 5, just you have 1 threesome, 1 twosome. You guys have pairs. You guys can have 3 pairs back there. Get with your partner and think about this together. See if you can synergize and think about more things in that, especially in that center column. In that white column, where is the mutual benefit, the mutual value? Give you a couple minutes to talk with your partners and see if you can come up with even more thinking. All right, let me pull you back in. This is where I'm going to invite you to shamelessly steal from your neighbors. Let's focus on that center column and see if we can't create some mutual benefit, mutual value. Who would share something that they were able to think about that fit in that middle slice that we both are focused on? What'd you come up with?
As we were talking through this, the easy answer was the solution, but we both come from different types of businesses. And what we really came down to at the end of it was long-term success, which is good for the client and good for the salesperson and for the organization.
Yeah, if you think about it, when you start with solution, that's very different than long-term success, because I really don't want to buy a solution. Right. I didn't wake up this morning wanting to go out and buy a solution from you. What I want is long-term success, and I'd love to be able to do that with a long-term trusted partner. And so one thing in that middle slice is a long-term successful relationship. Absolutely. What else you put in that middle slice?
Financial impact and growth. So the client wants to know how it's going to impact the financial growth of that organization and from a long-term standpoint. And then as a salesperson for my organization, how is that going to impact our revenue growth as well? So.
If you think about it, the client really does want that, right? When it comes to, they don't want to invest and then have a company perform poorly and go out of business, or have to get strapped financially and let go of a lot of needed people. And so I really do want that for you. And so it's that long-term effective success and growth for both organizations. I like it. What else did you come up with in that middle column? Don't everybody raise your hands at once, because we wouldn't want all that many things in that column. Think about it, it's hard to come up with. What else did you come up with?
I started, I guess, a little bit more to the front, and I just put the opportunity, right? Like,
what do you mean?
So we have something that we're selling, they have something that they need. It ends up being the same thing, so now there's an opportunity for us to start the discussion.
Okay. And so an opportunity to do good business together, just from that standpoint. I need something, you have it. Can we just get together and figure out if it's going to work or not? Absolutely, I like it. Anything else you came up with in that middle section that we both want, need, or value?
Time effectiveness. Is it a good use of time for the client? Is it a good use of time for me that we're talking?
Yeah, absolutely. The last thing in the world anybody would want would be to waste time for either party. And so one of the things we're both looking for is effective use of time here, for me and for you in implementing, figuring out if we can do business, and then the implementation phase from that standpoint. So if you think about it, as you look at those columns, most of the times, the 2 on the outsides are the longer columns. There's a lot we want, there's a lot they want, and we struggle to find that mutual value. And so that's why we focus on this concept of intent. So as we wrap up this first part of the morning and we get into our break, we've finished up the mindsets. And so we've finished up the ways that Maria has learned to think about creating value. And so when we come back from our break, we're going to focus in on the skill sets and tool sets that she focuses on once having learned these mindsets. So let's go on a break. We're going to do about a 15-minute break, 15, 20 minutes.